I'm Jonathan, and I'm here with a landlord and TurboTenant user, Jess Basnet.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to start off, how long have you been a landlord?
So it's been about 10 years now. Trying to think a little bit. I might have been a little bit longer. What happened was in my previous career, I was teaching English in Mexico, which is random. But my dad, that was right around when the economy changed. Mm-hmm. So he jumped into the market and started purchasing properties after 2008. Surprise, surprise. And when I came back from Mexico, he was looking for some help to manage those properties. So that's kind of when I got into it. So it's been probably since 2010. So no, maybe it's been longer than that. Man, 13 years. Sorry, I'm like 10 years plus a couple extra. But I guess it took us a couple years to get going. So yeah, I'll say 10 solid years.
10 solid years. Yeah. That's pretty good. And how many rentals do you own right now?
So we have 25. My dad has 24, and then I have my own personal rental that me and my husband have started our own little side biz that we're going to hopefully continue doing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And is the plan, is Dad going to get out of the business? You're going to take those over?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Yes, that is the plan for right now. And he's retired, so that's kind of his retirement thing. Is he likes to kind of have these rental properties. He checks them out. He drives by them all the time. They're all in the Denver area, more or less, metro area. And then, yes, he has groomed me to be able to take over for him. There's also the option. I have 3 siblings, so there's 4 of us. So they are all obviously aware of the company, but I don't think they want to run it. So it might be me continuing running that.
Yeah.
We have it. So
we hear that a lot from users, older users especially, who are like, I've built this rental business and now my kids aren't really interested.
Mm-hmm.
And, always interesting how people choose to carry on or not carry on.
Right. And that's interesting too, because that is why I got my real estate license. So I am a licensed realtor in Colorado, but I got it to help my dad start buying, because he had bought some. He actually started fixing and flipping at the beginning. So I was more watching that, and it was really lucrative at the beginning, but then it kind of, the market switched and so did he. So, yeah. I mean, there's still people who do that in Denver, but I don't feel like that's maybe the number one way to leverage your money.
I'm sure that's gotten a lot less lucrative.
Correct.
As our housing prices have skyrocketed.
Right. Although I have noticed a slight turn I've seen more foreclosures popping up lately and short sales, which is interesting. So who knows? Maybe that was just a fluke, but we've been seeing some of those pop up lately. So
that's interesting.
I know. So
yeah. So I was going to ask you about your realtor experience. So you got your license specifically to help your dad buy properties? Correct.
To help him buy and just to manage too. I think he had his license as well, but he's kind of faded out. And so just to be able to do that, I wanted to kind of keep. And the good thing is with the continuing ed, just kind of staying up on top of what's going on with the laws of Colorado and Denver specifically. And so that's also kind of the plus of me keeping that licensure while we have a rental properties. So yeah.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people who get into real estate investing, they wonder, should I get my real estate license? Obviously, it helps to avoid that fee, the commission fee, right? But would you recommend it otherwise?
Actually, I don't know if I would. You are held to a higher standard as a realtor, and that's fine. But I also think my dad letting his license go and stuff, he's not held to this higher of a standard, which I'm not trying to say try to get out of stuff, but you got to really stay on your continuing ed and really got to stay on the Colorado law or whatever state you're at. You need to stay on that if you're going to do it. So I'm not saying it's a no. You save money on some ways, but it's also now you're expecting you have to have certain bank accounts and things like that as a realtor that to be careful about. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how has it been as a realtor, especially like this last year? I mean, things are slow, right?
Right. It was a wild ride. It was definitely slower. What's hard is there's definitely buyers who still want to buy in the Denver area. I know every market's unique, but just that affordability is really tough right now. Yeah. So I have encouraged a lot more of my clients to that can afford to buy rental properties. It's actually been a really great I helped a lot of investors this year is what I should say. That's more what I ended up doing, which is crazy. So
yeah, we've heard a lot about they call it golden handcuffs.
Oh, yep.
Like you've got this super low interest rate on your house, but you've outgrown the house for whatever reason. So hanging on to that, making that a rental.
Correct. Yep. And that's actually how we got my husband and I got our first rental. We kept our old house, moved into a new one. And again, both interest rates are quite low and we don't feel like we want to get rid of them. So
Yeah.
we're just like, all right. And then moving up, we've talked about, oh, do we want to move to a different part of Denver or something? And we're like, maybe we'll just wait because the price to move is more expensive. So and that's a lot of buyers or sellers, I would say right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me ask the super annoying question that I'm sure you get all the time.
Sure.
Are rates going to come down? What do you think?
I do. I mean, they've already come down, which is so great. We're 6.5, and even my lender has been able to get under that, which is great.
Yeah.
And I do think it'll continue. I personally think it'll continue to go down. I don't think we'll see sub 4s ever again. I don't even know if we'll see sub 5s in my personal opinion, but I don't know. And I do see these next 6 months will be really telling. And I just feel like personally our market, like our actual economy, has still got another 6 months to go of really fine tuning what's going on. So I would say hang in there. And honestly, I do feel like for buyers, I would still, if you can afford, buy, because I don't think prices are going to be going down in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be a continual trend. I've not seen them go down in the 10 years I've had my license. So.
Yeah. And at least you have lower competition right now.
Correct. And that is a really great reason to get in.
Yeah.
And that's why you can actually get some negotiating done. You can get lower pricing with your, you don't have to come in at asking price, things like that, which is great. Or get things fixed in the home, which was not an option in the past. So.
Well, are you planning on buying any more rental properties in the near future?
Well, yeah, actually. So when we've kind of noticed this stuff going on, I've been keeping an eye out and kind of keeping an eye in certain areas of Denver and stuff. And so I do see my husband and I are still kind of thinking about, or my dad, kind of all three of us are kind of chatting about still leaning into wanting to maybe grab a couple more properties just because we're kind of seeing things turn over. And with the slower market, we kind of have more negotiating power. So we have kind of been looking into that. So we kind of have our eyes out and we're looking for specific properties that my dad likes certain stuff, which is great. And so just keeping an eye out for it.
Is he looking for different things than you are?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
My dad has his own formula. It doesn't, and I'm not saying there's really no reason why. He just has certain things where he likes, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath is his sweet spot. He loves that. And it is good, but I would be more open to, I don't have a problem with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath or something bigger or small, So he's very like, I like 3-2, and we have properties that are not fitting in all of that, but that's like kind of where so he looks for something really specific in that way. So that's interesting. And so I think those are kind of some of the things that he kind of likes to, there's location wise, he likes West Side. Those are more pricey.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love the Aurora area lately. It's been really great, especially South Aurora.
Yeah.
I kind of like some of that area. So just depends.
How do you decide? I mean, looking at even 3-2s, like, again, just looking at the Denver metro,
right?
3-2s they vary wildly.
Right.
There's some areas that were built like post World War II where it's like 1,000 square feet, but it's a 3-2.
Right.
And then there are newer homes that are maybe 2,000 square feet, but still a 3-2.
Right. And that's so funny. I don't think he's as picky, to be honest. I mean, he does, layout and stuff kind of matters, but like if it was a ranch 3-2 with those 6 by 10 foot rooms, he's like, that's all right. We have a couple of those. We have one in kind of a little bit South Denver kind of area. And it's a 4-2 and we finish out the basement. So it's got the 2 bedrooms up, 2 bedrooms down, but you can't fit a king in any of the bedrooms. So I'm like, that's interesting, but he thinks it's great. Honestly, for roommates, it's a great house.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't get king size beds, but it has been a really great house and the location's great and things like that. But it's just funny. Some of those old little like bungalow homes, I think you're right. Personally, for me, I'd be like, I'd rather have, a bigger room or, something that's more attracting to tenants renting, but he doesn't seem to mind that as much. So.
All right. So you mentioned education a few times.
Yeah.
You used to teach English in Mexico, which sounds awesome.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned like the education as a requirement of real estate licensure.
Correct.
What about education as a landlord? How did you learn everything you know?
That is great. It was a lot of trial and error, which is that's kind of why I think teaching or having TurboTenant is awesome, because I just, it's nice to learn something without having to learn it like firsthand, kind of to get the information secondhand. Someone's already gone through it, can share that wisdom with you so you can avoid some of that stuff. So I would say, I started off with just kind of getting out there with my dad knew some of this stuff. So his little bit of his background, just to kind of give you a heads up, is he works in the mobile home park or worked in the mobile home park industry. So he, bought parks, managed, large amounts of units, maybe there'd be 50 to 100 to 300 units in a park. So he was used to being, kind of this landlord of going through and checking out properties and making sure people are following HOA rules type things, that rules of the covenants of the communities and things like that. And so I think he was one kind of teaching me what to do and what not to do. And then also there's always a first time for everything in real estate, and especially as a landlord, that there's stuff that we were just like, wow, we've never had this. So we just had to kind of figure it out and, reaching out to lawyers, other landlords and, family, friends and stuff to learn what would you recommend we do in a situation like this. So that's why it's like, if I could take that information and pass it off to people, I think it'd be great. Yeah,
absolutely. And so you do trainings now?
Correct. Yeah. So now I got, certified, I guess is the word, to teach a Landlord 101 class. For realtors, I can provide a CE credit, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then I also provide it for a lot of my clients and friends. So just so they can learn about it.
That's awesome.
They can also have CE if they want, but I don't know if it helps them very much if they don't have a license.
Yeah. And is that only in Colorado, or are you?
Only in Colorado, you're right. Yep. So I only do it for Colorado, mainly because I know Colorado law. So.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
How do you stay up to date on state-specific laws?
Yeah, that's great. So part of that, just being a realtor, we have through, my local title company or through the real estate companies that are in Denver. I usually stay up, follow that. There's NAR, the National Association of Realtors, who's gotten a bad rap in the last year or so.
Not having a good time right now.
Not doing so great, but they have offered, they do a lot of CE and classes, as well as who is the Colorado Real Estate, certification. Anyways, there's a bunch of Colorado kind of, I'm going to say clubs, organizations that kind of offer these classes and then I honestly try to stay in City of Denver website. I hop on there and just kind of read up on it as often and kind of even watching the news. I know it's kind of random, but once you kind of catch a wind of something, you're like, Denver has started this, landlord licensure, program. I was like, oh, better learn about that.
Yeah.
So just calling people, trying to get as much information as possible is kind of how I go about it.
So you work with a lot of new landlords. What are some of the biggest tips you have for somebody who's just getting into this?
Oh, I do think you should be educated. So talk to a landlord someone that is a landlord already. Just ask them, what are the pros and cons? What have you noticed, kind of doing this? Because I don't think it's for everybody.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you can't have a rental property. It might just mean you should have it managed by someone else. Because you are on call 24/7. So I got phone calls. The favorite time is holidays, weekends, specifically Sundays are a really popular time to get phone calls. I don't know why that is, but it's a bummer. If you want a normal 9 to 5, it's kind of not what it is for you. So just kind of being aware you're going to get phone calls whenever, and you have to be available. And the other thing is I would usually never be more than an hour away from my rental property if I'm going to manage it, just because if something does go awry, you need to be able to get there. So yeah, I think that's kind of my first little starting tips, I'd probably say.
Yeah.
Actually, one more I'm going to throw in there. I would also have some money in reserves. So things break all the time. I used to say 5,000, but I feel like with the change in inflation, I might bump that up to 10,000. Have at least 10 grand in your pocket to be able to fix stuff with the rental property. So I think some people don't think about that, and then they've got this great property, but they're kind of barely making ends meet. So that can be really tough.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about TurboTenant and your experiences on our platform. How long have you used us?
It's been maybe 5 years now, maybe halfway through it. I could say that, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that sounds about right. I started using you personally a little bit sooner. And I had another realtor recommended your company to me. And so I had seen it and kind of been messing around with it before, but then we kind of moved my dad's whole company onto it, probably right before COVID. And we didn't really know. We were just like, oh, let's just do a software. Because before everything was like literally paper, pencil. It was very old school.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
I don't recommend that way of doing it, but I was just kind of like, Dad, we got to do something else. This is killing us, just because we were missing a ton. And it was just really tough. And so when I saw that, I was like, it was more convincing of my dad to be like, let's try this. So I would like bring one property and put it on there and be like, what do you think? So it took me a little while. So it probably took about 2 years to get everybody on there.
Yeah.
But I just slowly was siphoning. And then after 2 years, and then COVID was perfect because then we had a contactless way to pay because people were mailing checks or dropping off in person. And so that was the other huge benefit of TurboTenant. offering a way for people to pay. So that was really the huge, that's kind of what got the final push to the last property. So I was like, Dad, now people, we can't see people, COVID's going on. So that made it official. Like by 2020, whatever, middle of the year, we were like all ready to go. So
when you were moving people over, did you wait until the lease was up, or did you do it mid-lease with some of them?
At first, when I first started, I was waiting till leases were up, mainly because I was like, I don't know how to do this. But then I was like, oh, I don't have to wait anymore. I can upload the lease and everyone gets a copy, which was great. My dad was giving out paper copies. It was terrible. And people were losing them and stuff like that. And then the other thing I would do is, I realized it was almost simpler to while they were already tenants, just to kind of create an account. Not that having someone apply and do all that was hard, but it was just even easier for me to just create the tenants, add their information, and add the leases and everything. So once I figured it out, we got it moving a lot quicker.
Nice. And so favorite features, sounds like rent payments was kind of the catalyst.
That was, yeah. I love the rent payments. I love that you have options too for rent payments. If someone needs to use a credit card, great. Yes, there's a fee, but love that that's an option. And so that was the catalyst, I think, or one of the main reasons, but the marketing piece is awesome. And the application, that was the other reason, the big push is that I was doing applications like literally. I guess we have a website that's very terrible for my dad's business, truly terrible. The only thing that's kind of nice about it is that there's no login or anything. So if your information were to get lost, it would go nowhere, I guess, but that's not great. But anyways, you would apply and he would ask for like social security number, things like that. And then sometimes it wouldn't go through, but it would just not go anywhere. Or paying rent, it just wouldn't go through. It would just stay in your account and things like that. So it was just, he had a very archaic, not great system. So having your system of doing the background check, which we didn't do, I would call like multiple references. It was just way more work. I still call references, but I only call one reference now. I used to call 3 to 4. It was very, we vetted them very well, I would think, but it was just a lot more work. So
that's a lot of work.
Yeah. And the fact that tenants can apply and within minutes, everything, all the information's in your hands was huge. Whereas I was like gathering like a paper application and then going through it. And I'm like, oh, you didn't fill out this part. Sorry. Come back with this part filled out, So it was wild. I don't recommend. So I think those were the two main things that I really liked. But if I could add to that, I think things that were little bonuses that I was like, oh, this is great. The education piece, the thing that TurboTenant offers some great education, or just even the articles you guys sent out are so fun. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. So I'll click and learn more about it. Or I do know about that. What do they have to say? So I think that part is huge. We always had our own leases that we had created, but I loved looking at yours and being like, oh, we didn't have that in ours. So I would, add things in and be like, oh, well, all right. So I think that stuff was also really helpful. So, yeah.
Awesome. If you had to describe TurboTenant to a fellow landlord, how would you?
Yes, which I do describe in my class often. So I just say it's I guess software is the right word. I don't know my terminology great, or a website that is free for landlords to use, although you can pay a minimal fee pretty much in my mind to get some extra perks. But basically to market your property, process, people applying to your property, and then help them pay their rent. So those are kind of the three main things that I think are huge that TurboTenant does. So that to take care of all that without having to create your own paperwork or your own process or hiring a lawyer or this, that, and the other, it's pretty sweet. I don't know if we would have been as successful or been able to grow as big as we had without it. So it's a pretty helpful tool.
So March is Women's History Month. Do you have any advice for women looking at becoming real estate investors?
Oh, man. I think this is a really great job for women. And actually, the majority of the landlords I talk to are usually women, which is interesting. Not always. There are men too. But the reason I really like it for women is just it's kind of a fun way. It's so flexible in a sense. So yes, you get the phone call at midnight, but also you get no phone calls for weeks, right? Or whatever. So I think that makes it really nice. I do like, you're working with people. I like doing that. You're working with families or, whoever it may be. We have a lot of students. I have some students from some, universities and stuff in some of our properties. And I love the different kind of demographics and different people that I work with. I also speak fluent Spanish. So I love to work with tenants that speak a different language or things like that. So it's kind of a fun way for me to just get to know people in Denver, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, if people want to learn more about you or to check out your class, if they are in Colorado, how could they find you?
I feel like Instagram's probably the best way to that's where I kind of connect with a lot of people, and then it kind of connects to my website and everything there. So it's at realtor.jessvuk, JESSV as in Victor, UK. So that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me, Jess.
Sure. Thanks so much.